Well, let's dig into what it takes to be a promoter.
Okay, so I briefly touched on this a while back. I think the last time we talked, and I really wanted to come back to it and give a little more details. So my background, basically, I was growing up in Springfield, Missouri, and I was into all these like obscure bands that were kind of catching heat. Like they were starting to get popular, and this was back in the MySpace days. So I'm sure you remember that. We're a similar age. And I kept like asking the local promoters, like, hey, do you guys want to book some of these bands? Like they're actually kind of popping off, but it wasn't at that level that it would be hard to book them. So they were super focused on still booking like old, like new metal stuff, like making bands sell tickets. So like my old bands would sell tickets nonstop and just it was just, none of the shows were great. And every once in a while there was a good show. As I mentioned in the last video, this guy named Dan Magnum, the man, still to this day, my boy. He was putting on really good shows. But my friend and I, my friend Tyler, my friend Vimo, my friend Nick, like a bunch of our friends were both equally into the music scene. But I was more into the metal side and they were more into the hardcore side. So we'd been talking for a while about like trying to get some stuff going. So we both just created 2 promotion companies.
Nice.
And at first we had like, I know Tyler had mentioned like, hey man, let's just do it together. And I was like, yeah, like I probably should have, but I've always been kind of a bullheaded guy. And it wasn't that I didn't want to be involved in that. It was, I wanted to really focus on getting my favorite bands in, doing whatever it takes. Cause I'm just one of those types of people. Like if I kind of set my mind to something, like I have to do it. And I work well with people, but like in that situation, I was like, okay, I want to get these bands and I want to do whatever it takes. So here's the difficult thing about a lot of promoters. They'll specialize in one thing, but they're unwilling to go outside of that one thing. And I'll say this now, most of those promoters that I've known it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for them. So I decided to kind of go out on a limb myself, and we were pretty young. I mean, we were still teenagers. So I essentially just kind of like acted like I was an adult, and I created Vance Productions. And I won't mention their name because it's pretty, okay, it's called Balls Deep Promotions. That's another one of the reasons where I was like, I'm just going to kind of do my own thing. But I mean, like, love those dudes. I mean, this is like 20 years ago. I don't know. It's been a long time. But they started booking punk and hardcore like steady. And then I was booking like the more metal side. But what I did, and this is kind of a general recipe for anyone who's interested in becoming a promoter, or if you live in an area that doesn't have the shows that you want to see. I essentially created a booking company. I made like social media for it. I made an email, and then I started looking up the contacts for the bands that I really wanted to see, knowing that they weren't just going to send me those bands. So I kind of developed a relationship with a handful of like kind of the mid 2000s, like metalcore, some of the death metal bands, what later kind of became known as deathcore, those guys. And then I was just like, hey, these are the bands that I really want to book. What do I got to do? And then they essentially explained to me that like, we can't just give you this band. So what we'll do is we'll send you a package and we'll see how you do. And social media is great. I did use social media. There wasn't as many tools available then, but I went boots to the pavement. I made flyers. I went to Kinko's. I made a ton of them, and I put them freaking everywhere, dude. Everywhere. And I was kind of building a community amongst our music scene of like, hey, like if you guys want to see bigger shows, you have to support the local shows. So then what I was doing was shooting out emails, getting feelers, and then kind of doing like local showcases and being completely honest with the bands about like how the money was going to go. So essentially what I said is, hey, like for me to book this package, I have to put down a $500 deposit. I don't have $500 right now, you know? So let's do a show. Once I get the exact amount of money that I need to secure this show, everything else is your guys' money. And then this particular package only has 2 bands. So, you know, these 3 bands that kind of bring the biggest crowd, you guys are on the show. And that worked extremely well. They weren't like selling tickets. I think there was like a couple of shows where they like the booking company wanted us to sell tickets, but I was willing to do it myself. But some of the bands were like, no, man, we can do it. But I never wanted that to be like my thing. So basically what I would do is I would have local shows that were kind of fundraisers. And then I would have local festivals, like 8 to 10 band festivals that would go like all day. It'd be $10 to get in, and 100% of the proceeds went to the bands. So a bunch of the local bands called it Merch Fest.
Nice.
Because like it would like sell out. You know, we'd have like a ton of people there because we would mash up genres. So I can't encourage people enough to cross over genres when they're booking shows. There's been other people that I know that book and things like that are just refuse to cross genres. Like, oh, I don't like that band. It's like, yeah, that's okay, but like they'll bring enough people that'll get turned on to your company, that'll kind of get, you know, maybe meet some friends there that will then support the bands that you like. So for every like band I used to be like, I was like super hardcore into All Shall Perish. And I still love All Shall Perish to this day. But like my goal was to like book All Shall Perish. So they sent me like, I think it was like 8 bills before that of like really small bands. And we kind of just rallied as a team to like get these shows booked. And then before I moved, we were doing some pretty big shows. You know, we had booked like Suicide Silence at the time was like really popped off. There was just so many. There was just so many. And between our companies together, we helped each other out. We supported each other's shows. So to kind of distill down what it kind of takes, I just kind of want to give you as a ramble and give a little bit of a backstory. But kind of the bullet points of what it takes. You got to appear professional. You need to have your own like business account if you can, a separate bank account. Start reaching out to a lot of it's company based now, but just start hitting up the bands, the artists that you want to see, and essentially ask them how you go about booking them. Because bands want to be booked, I promise. They will typically get you in touch with their promoter or their booking agent, or you'll book directly through the band. I did that a few times too. From there, they might require a deposit. If they require a deposit, what I recommend is getting a group of your friends together, getting a group of bands together, knowing that the point of the show is to raise enough money to start getting these packages in town. Take care of the bands, always pay them any chance you get. And then from there, once you pay your deposit, they're going to send you a rider. And what a rider is essentially kind of like a list of demands, but in a good way. Like riders are good because you don't want bands showing up. I had a crazy thing happen with Winds of Plague one time that is still like to this day, just one of the craziest stories I'll ever tell. But a rider is typically things like, we need this food or this much money for a food buyout, towels, like whatever the band has requested to be there, and it needs to be there. Read the rider. And that's a prime example. I think it was Motley Crue or someone that had like the green M&Ms.
Right.
And everyone was like, what kind of band does that? And then I later learned that it was because they could walk in a venue and if there's a bowl of green M&Ms, they know that they read the rider. So all the stage stuff is probably good. But if you show up someplace and there's not, like they haven't done the things on the rider, it can really impact your performance. And these days everyone's got a cell phone in their pocket. They're going to capture, that, and then it's kind of high stakes. So take the rider, and then from there, what I recommend is just make it an official business, an LLC. You will lose money occasionally on certain packages, but it'll be worth it because you're building a music scene. So if you live in a town that doesn't have much of a music scene, just know I've been to 22 countries playing music. Everyone thinks their music scene is not good. Like every town in every country I've been to is like, yeah, I bet it's like way crazier. I'm like, dude, I mean, it's pretty consistent. Like, it is something that if you nourish it, it will bloom. And if you make it this competitive, toxic environment, people will not show up to your shows. So be positive, take care of each other, and don't take advantage of people. And that's how you get your favorite bands in town.